All right, so today we're diving into a story that is uh, well ripped straight from the headlines, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It is the UnitedHealthcare CEO shooting here in New York City.
Right in the heart of it.
It's a case that has captured the public's attention for sure.
Yeah, and not just for the whodunit element of it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a lot deeper than that. And you guys have sent us a ton of material.
We have.
News reports, police statements. I've even seen some pretty interesting discussions and forum threads online.
Yeah, it's really interesting how this has kind of captured the public imagination and brought up all these kind of bigger issues.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a mirror reflecting back some of our deepest anxieties about power and justice and what happens when systems fail us.
So, want the rundown?
Wait on me.
Okay, so it's Wednesday morning.
Okay.
Picture Midtown Manhattan, bustling as always.
I am picturing it.
Okay, you got the UnitedHealthcare Annual Investor Conference going on at a very swanky hotel.
Lots of big wigs in the room.
Oh, yeah.
Making deals, shaking hands.
Exactly. And our victim, Brian Thompson,
Right.
CEO for the past 3 years.
A giant in the industry.
Oh, yeah. And the attack itself.
Yeah.
Almost surgical in its precision.
Yeah. The assailant masked approaches with a silenced pistol
Yeah.
and just opens fire.
It's chilling stuff.
Totally.
And it's all caught on security cameras.
Oh, wow.
The footage is unsettling. You see Thompson leaving the hotel, completely oblivious.
Right.
And then, bam, the shooter just appears out of nowhere.
Talk about a bold move right in broad daylight.
And the escape,
Yeah.
almost as impressive as the attack itself.
Like something out of a movie.
The shooter takes off on a bicycle, weaving through Central Park, jumps into a cab, ends up at a bus terminal across the river in New Jersey,
Vanishes without a trace.
melts into the crowd.
Poof, gone just like that.
And investigators are still trying to determine if he actually boarded a bus.
So they're not even sure if he left the city.
Right. It's a
A
mystery.
real head scratcher.
Now, here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay,
The evidence,
What did they find?
the ammunition used in the shooting was stamped with the words deny, defend, and depose.
Wow, that's not exactly subtle.
Not at all.
Like a message right on the bullet.
A very pointed message.
So if we connect this to the wider context, the healthcare industry and all the criticisms around it,
Right.
denying claims, defending questionable practices, and ultimately, some would say, deposing people from their health and financial security.
Yeah, it's a heavy statement, for sure.
It really is.
And get this, witnesses say the shooter didn't harm any bystanders.
Really?
It seems his focus was solely on Thompson.
So a very specific target, a planned attack, not some random act of violence.
Exactly, but the motive,
Right.
that's the puzzle we're trying to solve.
The million-dollar question.
Okay, so let's talk about the suspect.
Okay, what do we know?
Investigators have been piecing together his movements leading up to the shooting.
Right.
We know he stayed at a hostel on the Upper West Side,
Okay.
using a fake New Jersey ID to check in.
Trying to cover his tracks.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
He actually lowers his mask to flirt with the woman at the front desk.
Oh, wow. Talk about a risky move.
Yeah, a little too confident, maybe?
Yeah, you could say that.
But luckily for the investigators,
Right.
that slip-up gave them a clear image of his face.
Oh, so they got him on camera.
They released the hostile security footage and are hoping the public can help identify him.
So they're putting it out there, hoping someone recognizes him. Makes.
Oh, wait, there's more?
Oh, there's always more.
Security cameras caught him all over the city in the days leading up to the shooting.
Really?
On the subway, in different spots, and from what investigators can tell, he was paying for everything in cash.
So this guy was working hard to stay off the grid.
This was premeditated.
Yeah, very calculated.
Now, remember we talked about the potential for DNA evidence.
Yeah, that water bottle, right?
Well, police found a discarded water bottle and a protein bar wrapper along the suspect's escape route. They also recovered a cell phone in a pedestrian plaza where he disappeared after ditching the taxi.
Ooh, that phone could be a gold mine.
Exactly. Those seemingly insignificant items
Right.
could hold the key to cracking this case wide open.
You never know what kind of data they might find on that phone.
But here's the catch.
What's that?
While it seems clear this was a targeted attack, the motive remains a mystery.
So we're still in the dark about why he did it.
The investigation initially focused on New York City.
Okay.
But new evidence suggests the gunman may have left the city by bus,
Really?
possibly heading back to Atlanta.
Interesting.
So now we're dealing with a multi-state investigation.
Yeah, that complicates things.
Significantly.
Trying to track someone down across state lines, it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack that's constantly moving.
Yeah, exactly. And now let's talk about the fallout.
Yeah.
This event has sent shockwaves through corporate America.
Understandably so.
Companies are scrambling to beef up security for their top execs.
I bet they are.
One Minnesota healthcare company even shut down its offices temporarily and told everyone to work from home.
Wow, they're not taking any chances.
This case highlights a growing tension.
Right.
Powerful CEOs, they often seem untouchable,
Mm.
operating in their world of privilege.
Yeah, they're kind of in their own bubble.
But this attack shows that even they might be vulnerable, a target for someone with a grudge.
Yeah, it's a wake-up call for sure.
And the public reaction to the shooting has been, well, let's just say it's been mixed.
I can imagine.
You've got the shock and disbelief naturally,
Of course.
but then you see a surprising amount of sympathy for the shooter, especially online.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
I think it speaks to a deep well of frustration and anger directed at the health insurance industry.
Right. People are fed up with rising costs, denied claims, feeling like they're just cogs in a machine.
Exactly. And the shooter's message, though, delivered through violence,
Right.
resonates with many who feel powerless against these systems.
It's like he's become a symbol of that frustration, even if people don't condone his actions.
It's forcing people to confront a difficult question.
What's that?
How do we hold corporations accountable when the usual channels fail?
Right, because voting with your wallet or writing to your congressman doesn't always feel like enough.
Exactly. It's a debate we're seeing play out in the online forums you sent us.
Yeah, what are people saying?
Some are condemning the violence outright, while others are saying, hey, at least someone is finally taking a stand.
It's a morally complex situation for sure.
It is. There's no easy answer.
No, there isn't. But it does highlight this growing tension between corporate power and individual agency.
And it raises some important questions about how we address grievances when it feels like the system is rigged against us.
It's a conversation we need to have as a society, and this case is just the tip of the iceberg.
This is like peeling back the layers of an onion. With every new detail, the story just gets more and more intricate.
Right, it's like a Russian nesting ball situation.
Exactly.
Layers upon layers.
But let's step back for a second and consider the wider implications here.
Okay, yeah, zoom out a little bit.
This case is about more than just one CEO or one shooter.
Right.
Or even one company for that matter.
It's bigger than all of that.
This is a flashpoint that's illuminating some pretty deep societal anxieties.
It's true. This case has become kind of a Rorschach test, forcing us to confront our own beliefs about corporate power and justice.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when people feel like they've been failed by the system.
It's like this shooting cracked open a Pandora's box, and suddenly everyone's asking who holds the power?
Right.
Who deserves justice?
Yeah.
What are the acceptable ways to fight for it?
It's a stark reminder that the systems we rely on aren't perfect. And even in a country as affluent as the United States, we still have these deep-rooted inequalities that can fester and lead to anger, desperation, and in extreme cases, violence.
We see that playing out in the online forums, where people are passionately debating this case.
Right. It's a microcosm of the larger societal struggle.
You see people wrestling with these difficult questions, expressing their frustration and anger, but also searching for answers.
Yeah, some are calling for boycotts of UnitedHealthcare and other big insurance companies.
Right.
Others are demanding policy changes, stricter government oversight of the industry.
It's a reminder that even amidst tragedy and turmoil, there's still a yearning for hope.
Absolutely. A desire for a better future.
And it's often in those moments of darkness that we see the most creative and impactful solutions emerge.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a shock to the system to really shake things up and force us to confront these issues head on.
But let's not lose sight of the investigation itself.
Right. We still have a lot of unanswered questions.
There are still so many unanswered questions. Investigators are poring over hours of surveillance footage, analyzing the evidence, chasing leads across state lines.
It's a massive undertaking.
And the shooter's meticulous efforts to cover his tracks just make it even more challenging.
Oh, absolutely. The fake ID, the cash payments, the calculated escape, it all points to a high level of preparation and determination.
It's almost like he was anticipating every move the investigators would make.
Yeah, that level of foresight could indicate some familiarity with law enforcement techniques.
Right.
Which opens up a whole new set of questions about his background and potential connections.
So back to the basics. Who is this guy?
Right. The million-dollar question.
That's his story. What drove him to this extreme act?
We don't have all the answers yet, but let's look at what we do know. Based on witness accounts and that hostile security footage, it seems likely the suspect is male. We know he's physically fit enough to pull off that bike escape and navigate the city. He obviously had access to a firearm, and judging by his handling of it, probably some experience with guns.
And then there's the meticulous planning, The fake ID, the efforts to avoid digital footprints, the choice of a silenced weapon.
All of that points to premeditation. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment act of rage.
And those chilling messages on the ammunition.
Right.
A deliberate statement, a calculated attempt to link his actions to the broader frustrations with the healthcare system.
It's like he wanted to make a statement.
He did, but there's also a layer of irony here, isn't there?
How so?
By taking out the CEO of a major health insurance company, the shooter silenced the very person who might have been in a position to actually implement some meaningful change from within that system.
It's a tragic paradox, and it highlights a crucial point. Violence rarely, if ever, leads to lasting solutions.
Right.
It often just escalates the conflict and shuts down opportunities for productive dialogue.
But at the same time, we can't ignore the very real systemic issues this case has brought to the surface.
Yeah, people are struggling to afford healthcare, getting denied coverage for critical treatments.
Feeling like they're pawns in a game they can't win.
It's a powder keg of resentment and frustration.
And this case, as tragic and unsettling as it is, has sparked a national conversation about those issues.
It's exposed the cracks in our healthcare system and the deep mistrust many people have towards those in power.
It's a wake-up call.
Absolutely.
Reminding us that even in a country as wealthy and advanced as ours, profound inequities and injustices exist.
And they demand our attention.
And that's where the real work begins.
Right.
Catching the shooter is just the first step.
The real challenge lies in tackling the root causes that led to this act of violence, rebuilding trust, addressing systemic inequalities, working towards a more just and equitable society.
It's a daunting task.
It is.
But one we can't afford to shy away from.
We have to face it head on.
Now, the public reaction to this case has been nothing short of fascinating.
Yeah, we touched on it earlier, the unexpected sympathy for the shooter, particularly online.
Right.
That sympathy, while unsettling to some, speaks volumes about the erosion of trust in institutions like the healthcare industry.
People are feeling disillusioned, frustrated, angry.
They feel like the system is rigged against them.
And in this shooter, they see someone who took action, someone who fought back against the system they perceive as oppressive.
It's important to remember, though, that we're dealing with a complex issue here.
Right.
There are multiple layers to consider.
On the one hand, we have a man's life tragically cut short, a grieving family, a community shaken by violence.
And on the other hand, we have the systemic failures. This case has exposed the widespread frustration with the healthcare system, the pervasive sense that something needs to change.
Navigating those competing narratives is a delicate process.
It requires empathy, critical thinking, a willingness to engage in uncomfortable conversations.
It's also a reminder that we're all connected in this complex web of systems and institutions.
Our actions or even our inactions have consequences.
This case is about much more than catching the perpetrator.
It's about understanding the motivations behind his actions, addressing the systemic factors that contribute to violence and mistrust, and working collectively to create a more just and compassionate society.
So as we reach the midway point of our deep dive, I'm curious, what are your initial takeaways? What's resonating with you the most?
For me, the key takeaway is the urgency of addressing the issues this case has brought to light. We can't afford to ignore the erosion of trust, the growing sense of powerlessness, the deep-seated frustration that many people feel towards those in power.
It's a call to action, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We can't passively hope for things to improve on their own. We need to actively engage, to demand accountability, work towards tangible solutions.
We've covered a lot of ground. The crime itself, the evidence, the elusive suspect, the ongoing investigation, the profound societal implications.
But this story is far from over and played around. The investigation continues, and there are still countless questions swirling around this case.
This case, it's like you rip the Band-Aid off. You know, some deep societal wounds.
For sure.
The shooting itself, shocking, of course.
Of course.
But what's even more revealing, I think, is the conversation that it sparked.
Right.
We're seeing such a clash of perspectives.
Yeah.
It's almost like a culture war playing out in real time.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating how this one event has become a lightning rod for so many deeply held beliefs and frustrations we're seeing. Anxieties about corporate power, healthcare access, even the efficacy of traditional protests, like, is it enough, the boundaries of justifiable action?
Right, and those online forums that we've been looking at.
Yeah.
They're a hotbed for debate.
They are, yeah.
You've got people arguing about whether this shooter is a cold-blooded killer or like a folk hero who struck a blow against a corrupt system.
Right, and it's like what leads people to such drastically different interpretations of the same event,
Yeah.
It really reveals a lot about where we're at as a society and, the fault lines in our collective understanding of justice and fairness and how change happens.
It boils down to this: how far is too far when you're fighting a system that feels rigged?
Right.
Is there a line that you just don't cross, even when the traditional methods of protest seem to fall on deaf ears?
Those are tough questions, and there are no easy answers. But this case, I think it forces us to confront them head on.
It does.
And it's a reminder, I think, that the pursuit of justice, as noble as it is, can sometimes lead to dangerous and morally ambiguous territory.
It's true. And, it's a reminder, too, that these issues, they aren't black and white. There's a lot of nuance here.
Yeah.
The shooter's actions were undeniably violent.
Yes.
But you can't ignore the systemic issues that may have contributed to his desperation.
Exactly. It's like trying to solve an equation with multiple variables. You have to consider the individual's motivations, the societal pressures, the failures of institutions, like it's all intertwined.
And amidst all this chaos, the investigation continues. I can't imagine what it's like for those investigators trying to piece together a puzzle with so many missing parts, chasing leads that seem to evaporate into thin air.
Yeah, and they're not just dealing with forensic evidence and witness testimonies either. They're trying to navigate a public discourse that is, highly charged. Emotions are running high on all sides. So it's a delicate balancing act for sure.
It's like they're walking a tightrope, trying to uphold the law while also acknowledging the legitimate grievances that are fueling the public anger.
Right, and we also can't forget about the potential for copycat attacks.
Oh, that's right.
This case has gotten so much attention, it's not inconceivable that someone else, similarly disillusioned and frustrated might see this as a blueprint for action.
That's a terrifying thought. But it underscores the urgency of addressing those root causes of this discontent, right?
Yeah.
Finding ways to channel that anger and frustration into some kind of constructive action.
Right, because that's the real challenge here. How do we create a society where people feel heard, where they believe that they have agency and that they can affect change without resorting to violence?
That's a tall order.
It is a tall order, but it starts with having these difficult conversations, grappling with the complexities and acknowledging that there are no easy answers.
Yeah.
It's about fostering empathy, building bridges across these ideological divides and working together to create a more just and equitable system. It's a long and arduous process, but I think it's the only way forward.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with this. This case isn't just a news story.
No.
It's a reflection of ourselves, our values, our anxieties, our hopes for the future.
The investigation will run its course. The headlines will eventually fade, but I think the questions that this case raises will linger. And I think the challenge for all of us is to grapple with those questions, honestly, engage in, thoughtful dialogue, and work towards building a society where events like this become unthinkable, not inevitable.
We have to move beyond the blame game, the finger pointing, the easy answer.
For sure.
It's time to listen, to learn, and to act, because the future in many ways depends on how we choose to respond to this moment.
The answers won't come easy and the path ahead will be challenging, but I think the first step is acknowledging the complexity, embracing the discomfort, and, committing to working towards a better future together.